Chairman. As you are doing your jobs in outreach and trying to address this new threat that's metastasizing, and we have individuals being radicalized on the internet to take action into their own hands, one of the things I'd like to focus on is specifically the phenomena of girls and women becoming radicalized, becoming jihadi, trying to travel to Iraq and Syria. I held a roundtable with my colleague Kathleen Rice on this phenomena months ago because there's a very specific dynamic going on here that we haven't seen before, where we have girls and women not just being victimized and recruited, but also being hardened jihadists themselves and actually leading some of those efforts. Just for some numbers, of the 250 Americans who have attempted to go to Syria, 1 in 6 are women. Almost a fifth of them are teenagers, but more than a third of the teenagers are girls. So we're seeing this new phenomenon. We've seen some cases in the media, 3 teenage girls from Colorado who were intercepted in Germany trying to travel over there, a 19-year-old from Minnesota who we found when she was in Syria, a Mississippi former cheerleader honor student whose father is a police officer and a Navy veteran trying to plot to head over to Syria with her fiance. This is a new phenomena. And so do your outreach efforts in your communities have anything focusing specifically on women and girls that are becoming radicalized, or are they just part of the general efforts for outreach? Any of you would like to answer?
We've watched this very closely. Certainly mindful of the number of travelers we've seen. As you see from the propaganda videos we've kind of collected and put together for the chairman, they're very sophisticated in their pitches and their outreach. You can't ignore the San Bernardino case as an example of radicalization targeting females in the United States. We also have a active prosecution now involving 2 women in New York City who were planning to use pressure cooker bombs to launch a plot that we interdicted last year in a year-and-a-half-long undercover operation. So this is something we're very concerned with, and part of our discussion with the community, while we kind of struggle with them to come up with what is the counter-narrative and who can deliver it.
Right. Anyone else want to?
In Austin, Texas, a couple of years ago, we actually had a family, husband, wife, and children with the JTTF arrested at the Houston International on their way to Syria through Turkey. And so for us, the key is not specifically addressing women, but addressing young people through educational programs, through economic opportunities. I don't think you see too often people that are educated wanting to blow themselves up. That is the exception, not the rule. And so youth programs and educational and economic opportunities is one of the things that we do.
Right. And what we learned, though, is ISIS is using a very specific and different message to recruit girls and women. Sheriff Bashar, do you have something to share?
You're correct, and that's clearly a concern on many levels because it brings in a whole demographic that typically is less likely to be as scrutinized because so many of the bombers or terrorists in the past have been fighting-age males. I worked on a case study in a Middle East suicide bomber attempt of a female, and as they broke it down, they actually analyzed the psychological reasons why she was put into that position and thought it was her only thing that she could do to I guess, feel better about herself. And so the disaffected and those that are vulnerable to a message of this is a higher purpose and you'll be valued if you do this are the ones generically I think that we need to have more outreach and more connectivity to look to interdict that message and bring them away from that siren call, if you will.
Great, thank you. My second question is about, Sheriff Bashar, you mentioned you don't have real-time information sharing. This is a real concern to me. We've broken down some stovepipes since 9 across the federal agencies. We've done some work between federal, state, and local, but I think we have a long way to go. Fusion centers are an important part of that, but some fusion centers are not as good as others, and it comes down to relationship. I actually had a bill, H.R. 3503, to address improving our fusion centers and giving higher access to security clearances to you all and your teammates so that you have better information out on the front lines. It was passed unanimously in the House, being held up in the Senate right now. But if you were in charge, what would you do to, and I only have a little bit of time, Sheriff Richard, break down those stovepipes? Some of it's policy, some of it's clearances, some of it's equipment, but what would you do in order to make sure you have all the information that you need?
Well, I think you touched on a lot of the important issues as it relates to how we better communicate, but it gets back to, the methodology sometimes in an urgent situation. As I mentioned, I have a top secret clearance, but I don't have an instantaneous ability to receive information without actually physically bringing us together. And in this day, in terms of the technology that's available and we see used by terrorists, it's a bit frustrating to literally have to drive someplace to get, actionable information.
Yeah, that's insane, and we need to work on that together, and I know I am out of time. Does anyone else have anything to say on that issue, and we can follow up?
Yes, ma'am. I think it's really important that police chiefs have gone through a background investigation, presumably, have been licensed peace officers. They're known entities. I don't think we're any threat to our nation. And sadly, the majority of police chiefs in this country do not have a top secret clearance. Right. And I think one of the things that we need to look at is if there's an investigation or an issue in an area of responsibility for a police chief, we need to look at it, how we can provide that information for that person who ultimately is responsible for the safety of that community outside of the clearance process. And so that's just food for thought, because the truth of the matter is a lot of police chiefs are in the dark about investigations in their area of responsibility.
We definitely need to improve